know who I am. Frank Rhodes the second, the president of IFLA Boston. So on behalf of the board of directors, committee chairs, and volunteers who are orchestrating today's program, I'd like to thank you for joining us. If you're a regular in our thought leaders, which most of you are outside of a few unfamiliar faces to me, thanks for coming back. And for those of you that it's your first, welcome. If you get to the end of today's discussion and feel inspired to see more programming like this, we would welcome you to join our think tank committee. This is a group that facilities managers that meet for 30 minutes virtually per month to brainstorm and conceive all of the chapter's programming, including webinars, thought leaders, tours, programs, white papers, and the podcast to ensure it meets the needs of you as a facility manager and even our community. So just to connect with either myself or Gio, and we can certainly connect those dots and then make sure that you're a part of our volunteer base. I would like to thank Landscape America, Daryl, and Doug, who has left probably to go grab a coffee. Here he comes back. Look at that. For underwriting today's program as a part of their generous annual partnership. We are joined by the two that I just mentioned. Then now I'm going to turn it over to Daryl to share a little bit about Landscape America with you.
Great, thank you so much. I'm gonna share my screen and read off of a couple bullets, so I'm conscious of your time. So good morning, my name is Daryl Avery Swanson, and I'm just gonna give a brief overview about Landscape America. And I've just created a quick slides to help answer some common questions. So we'll jump right into it. So we operate daily in accordance to our core values. We're focused on building relationships with our clients and getting to know them as much as their properties. So a little bit about what makes us different. We have 100 to 150 employees in both green and snow season. Over the past 3 years, we have a nearly 100% retention rate season to season with our crew. And we have employee engagement through open book management and practicing lean management. And so that drives consistent results and a culture where people care about what they do, but even further on an ownership level. The next slide is our service area covers Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So for over 15 years, we've been working with commercial properties in both landscape management and snow and ice management, allowing our clients to have that one contract and one point of contact for all their properties. And everything is in-house, one roof, and an experienced and professional team focused on customer service and ease of business. We have additional crews and additional equipment to cover any call-outs or performed maintenance, just to keep everything covered. And then Landscape America is now solely focused on commercial properties. So we have hired experts from the commercial space who understand the nuances of commercial property management. We operate in a number of key verticals from corporate campuses, retail centers, hospitality and healthcare to assisted living, industrial colleges, and private schools. And a couple last slides. We are big enough to handle properties of any size. But even through the growth, we maintain that local business approach. Being family owned and operated, both owners are accessible and committed to driving client retention and success. And then our process, let's see. Here we go. Go back. Can we see?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect. I don't know what's happening. Well, I'll keep going on this side. So you're stuck with me. Our process is set up to be seamless and simple for our new clients. With a quick 5-minute intro, followed by a 20-minute on-site assessment, we can deliver customized plans for your property or properties of any size. So if you are interested, I know that Doug is here too, but please reach out to him and I can send the contact information as well. I'm sure you have it, as well as going to landscapeamerica.com.
Thank you, Daryl.
You're welcome.
All right, perfect. Appreciate that. And certainly know Doug and I have had some good conversations on some strategy for 2024. So really appreciate your partnership and sponsorship for IFLA Boston. Now I would like to introduce Lisa Whited. Lisa believes in the art of possibilities and has a passion for improving the world of work. She believes when work is better, our world is better. Lisa has consulted with companies large and small, local and global, including Google, Microsoft, WTW, Omnicron, Tilson, and Woodard and Curran. Lisa has an MS in Organization plus Management from Anatoch University and holds certifications in meditation, facilitation, interior design, and as a circular economy specialist. That is quite incredible, and all things I do not know. Her book, Work Better, Save the Planet, is a guide for building employee engagement and inclusivity while positively impacting climate change. Lisa received IFMA's Distinguished Author Award last year in 2023 and is currently pursuing her doctorate in organizational development and change in Fielding University. Lisa, I now turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Frank. I am delighted to be here. And Ashley, especially, I want to thank you for extending an invitation. I met Ashley in Denver in September at IFMA's World Workplace, and she's just been wonderful to make this happen. So I'm grateful to be here. One thing I am decidedly not certified in is meditation. So I want to just correct that. It's mediation. Facilitation and mediation. I wish I could be certified in meditation, but my brain is like shiny squirrel. I will share my screen and we'll make sure we're all working okay here. All right, let's get this over here. Okay. So I am sharing information that Gary Mickey-Eunice and I presented together in Denver. This is slightly modified, but I met Gary through IFMA, and you'll hear more about him and his great work as I move forward. I am using Menti, and some of you may have used this tool before, and it may be new to others. So I've got up here on the screen a QR code. If you open your phone and open the camera, you can go right to the QR code. It will open up the Menti. You can also, if you prefer, open a web browser on your computer, type in menti.com and enter that number, 4449-0148. And the reason I'm using this, and it's a tool I've been using for several years now, is it allows everybody to participate. You don't have to worry about your name be associated with your question. It's a polling software, it's efficient, and I love it. So, and you see when you get there, and I'm going to join you on this to make sure it's all working. You can see that little thumb going up. That just lets me know that you're connected, it's working. You can hit the thumbs up. So my very first question for you is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how knowledgeable are you about the circular economy? So on the far left is I know nothing, and on the far right is I am an expert. And it just helps me have a sense of the knowledge of everybody on the call. I say that the circular economy is a lot like the practice of yoga or golf, two other things that I'm not great at, but it's like a continuous journey. I think it takes a lot to be an expert in either of those. So I believe the circular economy is similar. It's a continuous journey of learning. And so you can see here, this is telling me where people, so we've got 5 who said, I know nothing. We've got 2 who are sort of a little bit ahead of I know nothing. And I would say, you know, if I rank myself, I'm really on the lower end as well, even though I'm a circular economy specialist. So I put myself down a little bit too. All right, great. So this helps me understand where folks are at. Thank you for participating in that poll. And what I'm going to talk to you today is the skills of a circular workplace. So what is the circular economy first, and then what are the skills we might need? I'm going to share a case study, which is a project here in Portland, Maine, where I live, that was completed very recently near the end of last year, and then talk a little bit about how we as a facilities management professionals and as an industry might move forward with the circular workplace. So again, with Menti, I'm going to, oh, wait a second. I'm going to check one thing. I want to make sure that that you can type your question at any point. So on all slides. Okay, good. I'm gonna make sure that this is working. So at any point on your phone or your device, it should say open Q&A. And if you hit open Q&A, you can type a question in. So even though I'm moving forward in the slide deck, you can hit open Q&A and type in a question. You're welcome, of course, to just also put it in the chat if you prefer, but some people like this because, again, it's anonymous. I'm going to stop near the end and we will answer some of the questions. So at any point, please go ahead and type in your questions. So first of all, why circular? Why are we even talking about this? Well, interestingly enough, in my own little rural state of Maine, the headline in one of the newspaper articles this week was that 50 our small town landfills are hitting capacity. They're 50% more full than they were a year ago already. It's just overwhelming the amount of debris that's going into our landfills. And many times we think about climate change and we think, well, we need to really pay attention to carbon emissions. And we do. Carbon emissions is important, but landfills actually are something we need to keep our eye on because they create methane. And methane is far more damaging. It's like 25 times more damaging than carbon emissions. So a lot of times you'll think of cows or animals when you think of methane, but it's our landfills that are also generating methane. So a couple of statistics here. This is from the Environmental Protection Agency. 600 million tons of construction debris are generated every year in the United States, so US numbers. 144 million tons of construction debris go into the landfill every year. And I am a fan of ChatGPT. I'm still learning about it, but I was curious. And according to ChatGPT, if we lined up 144 million tons, it goes around the Earth 3.5 times. So just to give you a sense of scale. And then, of course, we have plastics. Plastics, 35.7 million tons are generated. 27 million tons end up in the landfill every year. And again, this is just in the United States, just a US statistic. And furniture, I talked about construction debris, but furniture, 12.1 million tons are generated every year. A huge amount goes into the landfill, 9.7 million tons. We only recycle 0.03% of furniture every year. So recycling just isn't really what, and I'm sure many of you have heard this. You think you're throwing a plastic into the recycling bin and it ultimately doesn't get recycled. We're overwhelmed with it. And then empty space, and you all that manage, especially commercial office space, and you know this, it was empty before the pandemic. Spaces were empty in the office 40 to 60% of the time before the pandemic. And now, even 3 years later, we're seeing occupancy about 25%. It's very, very low. So that's a lot of empty space. To heat and cool that empty space is also, of course, that's operational carbon is damaging to the climate. So how damaging is it? Well, one empty desk is the equivalent of driving a diesel car 6,000 kilometers a year. So a lot going on there. That's a lot of the reasons why to pay attention to circularity and the circular economy. Just want to highlight this wonderful document that was created last year. Jeffrey Saunders did a lot of the research for IFMA. He created the Emerging Topics Working Group white paper. And I served on one of those 6 emerging topics. I was on the circular economy working group, subgroup with Gary McUnis. The two of us co-chaired that group. So a lot of what I'm sharing with you came out of that conversation last year. Deep dive. So what is the circular economy? Well, we're used to the linear, right? It's just how it's always been. You take something, you use it up as much as you can, and then it just goes straight to the landfill. You might get to the middle part of recycling. We're trying to keep things out of the landfill, but eventually it still will end up in the landfill. The circular economy, on the other hand, is nothing goes to the landfill. So you do everything you can in your model of use to not let things go to the landfill. And this is a slide that Gary actually had shared, but I thought it is quite brilliant. He said, you know, how many, when you think of the circular workplace, do you imagine a building like this circular? And that's really not what we're talking about. As you know, it's really more about keeping materials out of going to landfills. That's really what it's all about. And it's more like a butterfly. And it's more like a butterfly in that this is actually from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, oh gosh, I can't remember when it was founded, but quite a while back in Europe. She's essentially the godmother of circularity. This butterfly diagram comes from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And what you're seeing here on the left side are what we call the organic or the bio aspects of our world and our environment. So we're doing everything we can. You think about farming and agriculture, biogas. We're doing everything we can to use these materials and keep them out of the landfill. And on the right side is more of what we think of with manufacturing and mechanical aspects of our economy. So again, you're trying to do everything you can to keep things out of going into the landfill. Ellen MacArthur Foundation has a ton of awesome information, and we'll definitely also make sure you get this deck with any links and further information if you want to dig into it. So essentially, what is a circular economy? It's a system where materials never become waste and nature is regenerated. We say waste is a design flaw with the circular economy. Whereas in the linear economy, waste is an expectation, it's a feature. Products and materials are kept in circulation through processes like maintenance, reuse, refurbishment, remanufacture, recycling, and composting. And I've got some specific examples I'm going to share with you in a minute. And it tackles climate change and other global challenges like biodiversity loss, waste, and pollution by decoupling economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. This is a disruptive way of being, especially for how we've, a capitalist economy, a linear economy. So this is why it's not just circular design, it is truly economy. When I share the case study, you'll see some of the challenges we ran into with getting this to be successful. So there are three principles of the circular economy: designing out waste and pollution. So from the very beginning, designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in play for as long as possible, and then regenerating natural systems. Again, a very sort of organic approach. So that's the circular economy. And then through the work with Gary, that Gary and I have been doing within IFMA, we've focused on the circular workplace. And this is applying the principles of the circular economy to the whole planning, design, and management of the workplace. So it's really backing up all the way and thinking about how we even plan a workplace so that it can be circular. It requires new skill sets. So, it really does have you questioning assumptions, questioning how we always have done things. So through design and communication, huge parts are having to have persuasive conversations to really influence behavior, because it really is, it's again, disrupting how we've always done things. It requires innovation and not being afraid to fail. Failing first, failing forward, and then really thinking about systems and analyzing things, looking at how we are doing things differently. And procurement definitely comes into this conversation on how we procure our materials for the workplace. There is a lot of different resources. I mentioned the Ellen MacArthur Foundation a couple minutes ago. There's also the Biomimicry Institute, and Janine Benris is the person who founded the biomimicry way of being. She wrote a book several years ago. I think it was back in the 90s. And again, that's all about the regenerative nature, keeping things out of the landfill. The Circular Economy Institute. This is where I got my certification. When I was researching my book a couple years ago, it's when I first learned about the circular economy. I knew nothing about it. And I was curious. And when I learned about it, I was like, I want to learn more. So then I found the Circular Economy Institute, and they have a fantastic online program. I learned a lot there. Metabolic. is a very large company, global, that does fantastic work in this world. And then the ISO 59000 series. So it's still evolving. The standard is not final. It's an evolving draft standard, but it's all about the circular economy. And I learned a lot about that through the CEI. So many resources if you want to learn more. And then, of course, within IFMA, we've got these awesome programs, the CFM, FMP, and SFP credentials. And IFMA is also looking at how they can bring circular economy terminology more strongly into these programs. They've done it with SFP. They recently went back and introduced more circular economy thinking in that program. And I know they're working on reviewing these other two. And then the IFMA Workplace Strategy and Leadership Program through the Workplace Evolutionaries is also taking a look at how they can pull in more circularity into their program. And of course, the CEI, and IFMA has a professional relationship with CEI. So I believe if you're interested, you can get a discount on that one as well. So there are opportunities, and I'm really happy that under Dean Stanberry's leadership, who's the current chair of IFMA, he's the one who spearheaded the emerging emerging topics group last year. And through his work, there's definitely been more focus on this. So I'm going to, just remind you, any questions, type them in. I'm not going to pause and answer them right now, but please make sure you type in any questions you've got. So the circular economy, it literally is everywhere. And this is one of my favorite stories. Again, I learned of this when I was going for my credential. It's a company called Bundle. Now, when we think about washing machines, it's not on my high on my list. I want to go buy a washing machine. Most of us don't want to have to deal with appliances or buy them. It's a pain in the butt. But what we want is what they give us, which is clean clothes. I want clean clothes. And so the idea of Bundle came from a company in the Netherlands. They manufacture the highest quality washing machines and dryers, and they let people use them. And so in my own house, they will deliver a washer and dryer, and I don't pay for it, and I don't rent it, but I pay for it for use. Every time I use that machine, I will pay something to Bundle. Excuse me. So they are incentivized to do everything they can to make the highest quality product so they can get as much use out of it as possible. I will keep that machine for 5, 6, 10 years. They'll service it. They'll make sure it stays in top-notch quality and top-notch shape. Then they'll come and take it away from me and give me another one if I want to upgrade or I'm moving. So what they do is they bring it back to the factory, they pull it apart for parts, or they remanufacture. They are the ones that take it upon themselves to make sure it never goes to the landfill. So this is use, paying by use. So it is allowing us to keep appliances out of the landfills. Patagonia is another famous example. This was an ad they ran a few years ago. Literally, don't buy this jacket. They did not want people to buy their clothing. They want them to use up their clothing. And then when it's worn out, they want you to send it back to them. And they will, again, pull it apart, remanufacture, repair, and they have a reuse way with their clothing. And if you study the numbers of clothing that ends up in landfill, it's astronomical. My kids actually have been one of the best lesson for me about the clothing in fast fashion. They refuse to buy anything new. They would much prefer to go to consignment and Goodwill. So there are companies, this is a blue jean company, that they also take apart old jeans and make new jeans. The food and agriculture, a tremendous amount of waste happens in our world of agriculture. So if you're interested in food and agriculture systems, there's a lot you can dig into there about what's being done to keep food and waste down. The right to repair bill. This was actually a law in many states, including my own state, where it gives consumers the right to repair things instead of being a throwaway society. So a phone company that you are able to take it apart, figure it out, repair it. I think about my father back in the 70s. I remember him darning his own socks. He would put a light bulb in the heel of the sock, and then he'd fix it. It's really an old idea. This is an old idea, but just reuse things up as much as we can. And I just thought this was a very fun example of a reuse of tires as sort of a wall to define an open landscape area. So let's talk specifically about the built environment. ARUP has got, this is ARUP, this is their diagram. I love this. It's a really wonderful overview of the systems, thinking about a building, thinking about, again, from the very beginning on how we design it, where we source the materials, how it is constructed, how it's operated. Is it like a Lego kit that can be reconfigured, disassembled, and then repurposed? So there's tremendous information on their website as well. And here's an actual example. Olympic Stadium in London, 98% of the demolition material was recycled or reused. Huge amount of material. It's amazing. So there are examples of this all over the world. Europe is far further ahead than the United States is on this thinking of circular economy. I shared the idea of the washing machine as a service, but lighting as a service is another one. And Philips, which goes under the brand Signify, is their as a service a component or arm of their company. So again, think about light fixtures in parking garages, in airports. So the idea of all of those light fixtures going to a landfill at the end of their life, instead, these companies are paying for the use. And then the manufacturer comes in, takes all the components out and pulls them apart to remanufacture or reuse. And again, does everything they can to keep things from going to the landfill. Furniture is another great one. And furniture as a service, again, there's a couple, IKEA, I think, has started doing this with residential furniture. So it's not renting, it's not leasing, it is you're using it, you're paying for the use, and then the manufacturer, it's on them to bring it back to their company, to their headquarters, to pull it apart and to get it back into production. And you'll see some countries have actually a tax or a fine. So it really is putting the onus back on the manufacturer, the ones that are creating these materials in the first place, to be the ones that are responsible for what happens at the end of their life. So when we think specifically about facility management, this is a from to, this is Gary had put this list together, Gary McUnis, and I just really liked it. It's instead of linear, we're thinking circular. Instead of shareholder capitalism, we're talking about stakeholder. And in this case, stakeholder is, it's us, it's the users, it's the earth as stakeholder as well. From not having accounting of externalities to having full accounting of what's happening and what's going on. Reporting on compliance and disclosure, and instead demonstrating past outcomes. And we know some companies have ESG metrics and all these other things that are like checklists. And this is really bringing a little bit more awareness and say, instead of a checklist, are there actions we can be taking that are different? And really making sure that our actions align with what we say we're trying to achieve. So instead of chains, it's cycles. Instead of, I love this one, making the business case for sustainability, it's making a sustainability case for your business. So it's really more about thinking about the triple bottom line, planet, profit, people. You know, it's really thinking in that more holistic way. Instead of trying to control nature, we're trying to mimic nature, and that's what biomimicry is all about. And instead of workplace managers as stewards taking care of passengers, workplace managers as guardians of the ship we call Earth. And that's Gary's language, but I think it's quite lovely. So in the workplace, we often will hear this, let's put people first. We put people first, proudly proclaim, we put people first. But I argue that that's what screwed us. That's what got us in trouble in the first place. We need to put the earth first. We put the earth first, then there's something there for our people. And there's a way to do both, to serve both. I'm going to transition now and share the case study for Woodard and Curran. So Woodard and Curran, again, here in Portland, Maine, it's a science, engineering, design, build, and operations company specializing in water and environmental projects. They're actually across the country in 27 locations. They were established in 1979. They have 1,300 employees. And their largest office has been historically here in Portland with 220 employees. They have an awesome vision. Clean water, safe environment, healthy communities, happy people. They had a new CEO join a couple of years ago, the first female CEO in the history of their company. And one of the first things she did is take the organization through a strategic plan process. And this is the vision that they came up with. And it was so important that we kept hanging on to this vision to drive us through the project. It was a tremendous team, a huge team. This is just a percentage of those involved, from the furniture vendor, Creative Office Resources, to Chinbro, the construction company, to all the internal team stakeholders. Cunningham was the architect and design professional involved. And then I assembled a local team as well for thinking about circularity, change management, and many other aspects of the project. And on reflection, there were 3 essential skills for circular workplace success: communication, design, and procurement. Those are the 3 I'm going to spend a couple of minutes right now explaining how this was impacted. So for communication, the Planetary Health Workshop, that was one of the things that we did early on, bringing all the leaders together of the company and other stakeholders for a conversation about why we were doing things differently. We also had a lot of one-on-one conversations. We did scenario planning where they thought about, well, what is the impact on our company a year from now, 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years? What are the factors that could be impacting how we do business? And then lots of education and sharing of information. The design was a very radical departure for how their office space had been designed before. So we were really looking at different ways of analyzing what they needed and how much they needed, instead of basing it on historic use of space. Very modular in thinking about the components and the sizes even of those components. And again, questioning assumptions all the way through and respectfully pushing boundaries. There was definitely some push and pull all the way through, from construction to furniture to behavior and end user. And then finally, procurement. Really looking at what our options were for as a service or buyback being at the end of the furniture life, that the furniture manufacturer would buy all the product back. Reusing, they had a lot of equipment in the space they'd been in for 30 years. What could we reuse? And then finally, with procurement, there really needs to be, and because it's a circular economy, really working to create in your own region demand for as a service if it doesn't exist now. So the Planetary Health Workshop, all the workshops that I design are very intentionally collaborative, small group, hands-on. So even though they were all done virtually, it was very much an engaged, facilitated process. And this is an example. We asked them in the workshop, think about the story you want to tell. We hear about storytelling. Like, so what would you tell your friends about Woodard and Curran specific to climate change and the planet? Would you tell them that you're a leader or a follower? Are you a risk taker? And how will this new building bear witness to the whole company? And these are some of the things that they answered in the workshop. We are leaders in environmental stewardship and within our communities. We're a company that lives its mission and has leadership and a headquarters that demonstrates that commitment. And investing in a sustainable future for the world, our company, and our people. So those were great thoughts for them to get going, to think about why would we do things differently. And then with the design, I mentioned the design and the modularity. This is such an important factor for this space. We came up with one module, the work point, and then use that as a basis of everything else, multiples of that. So one focus and huddle room, one size, 2 of those could equal a small meeting room. 4 of them could be a medium meeting room. So this idea of modularity in even size of spaces was a really important factor. We did design for day 1. And then we did design scenario for future planning down the road. And you'll notice that we did as much as we could to keep things off of the perimeter walls, to keep, walls off of the perimeter window line. This was a fairly new building that was constructed for another tenant that originally made it for 6 floors for that one company. Then the pandemic hit. It was designed pre-pandemic, the building was. Pandemic hits and they're like, we don't need 6 floors. So they started subleasing the space, and Woodard and Curran sublet the top 2 floors of this building. So you'll see a lot of the spaces that you'd expect, there's a fair amount of workstations, but there's also a lot of social space and connection space and meeting rooms. There's a beautiful view of Casco Bay, of the ocean right out this window, and a roof deck as well up on the 6th floor. So we created these different scenarios, imagining, well, what happens if we need far fewer workstations? So let's reduce the number of workstations and add more collaborative space, or we need more focus rooms. So that was some of the scenario planning that we did in the workshop. So we, again, weren't just designers going off and doing it on our own. We engaged your end users and your everyday folks on thinking about what the scenarios could look like. And then procurement. I've talked about this a little bit already, but it's really thinking about what are our policies around purchasing? Can we look differently? Do we need to create different relationships with other partners that will engage with this in this process? So you can see how this can start to impact your finance, your purchasing, managing. It really is something that can impact everybody. Also, I did a pre and post circular economy knowledge. So similar to the scale that you just did at the very beginning, I asked folks before we started the project, what do you feel like you are on a scale of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10? And then after we were done the project, which went on for about 18 months active time, you can see there was growth in pretty much everybody. The one I circled here, though, was the client rep, and I was curious about why that stayed so low. And I may not be the only answer, but I believe one answer is because he did not come in until much later in the process. So he was not really engaged on the early conversations, and I don't think really understood why we're doing it, and was frustrated that we were trying to do things differently. Makes sense, right? He was in charge of time, of getting it done on time, and budget. So clearly made sense that that was an important thing for him to pay attention to. So what were the lessons that we learned? Linking the organizational vision and values to the initiative. If you remember back to that vision statement that Woodard and Curran had talked about, clean water, happy people, healthy community, we linked it constantly back to that, saying, this is why we're trying to do this. You say, this is your vision of what you're trying to achieve. This is one way to help us get there. That importance of onboarding the entire team early and being consistent. We had weekly meetings, consistent messaging. Terminology was different, constantly bringing this up and staying focused on what we're trying to achieve. Educating as we went. As I said, it's a practice. Nobody has all the answers. And even Tinbro was one of the most phenomenal construction companies I've ever worked with, and very advanced in understanding LEED, LEED building design, principles for well design. There were still things that they raised as awareness that helped all of us learn. And then not preaching or being judgmental. I mean, a sense of humor, I will say, really was important to hang on to. And we had a good time. We were a good team working together. But it was important to be persistent. And sometimes that can, I'll say for me personally, a little bit out of my comfort zone. And yet that we had one person in particular who was really awesome at being persistent, very tenacious. We needed that. So don't be afraid of getting a team together that has strengths that you don't have. It can definitely benefit the project. So again, another place, there's a whole paper that I wrote on this. I got input from the entire team. So if you want to, you can, again, the QR code, or go to that link and you'll be able to download the case study and read through in detail. And I encourage you to do that. So as far as developing circular workplace skills, what we'd like to do, and Gary and I are sort of joined at the hip on this, is establish a centralized circular workplace body of knowledge for all certifications. and have a cohort, get this cohort community, whether it's workplace evolutionaries and ESIS, which is another community of IFMA, or just IFMA folks in general. We'd love to get a cohort together and then do more applications and case studies, again, to bring everybody, share the knowledge, share with each other, and learn as much as we can. So if you're interested, I put Gary's email address there and my own, and you're welcome to reach out to us. We haven't scheduled anything for 2024 as far as just an informal conversation, but I hope we'll do that within the first quarter. And then there's my book, and I am so proud. It was such an honor to receive IFMA's Distinguished Author Award. And I want to do a shout out to Sheila Sheridan, who did a beautiful job nominating my book and me, and I am very, very grateful. So I want to just see, I'm going to move ahead and see, okay. And, oh, all right. Ashley, yes, definitely. We'll have you talk about Davies.
So when we were in Denver, there was can everyone hear me? Sorry, I was muted
Yes.
twice. So, okay, wonderful. There was someone from Davies Office Furniture who also spoke briefly during Lisa's talk, just talking about options they have. And I thought it was very interesting. And I'm sorry, I don't have slides to present because it's not my company, but that I'd share. So Davies will actually take your furniture that you're offloading, bring it back to their remanufacturing site, which I think they only have one currently in the US, but they are looking to add more as time goes on and this becomes more popular. And they will remanufacture the furniture instead of having it go to a landfill. And you can also work with them to look at options too.
Yeah, they've got, I'm so glad you mentioned that. They have such a great operation. They'll even, cut down panel heights, fabric,
yep. Repowder coat, paint your brown files to be white or anything like that. So
right
at the beginning of it. And I know manufacturers are starting to get these questions from their clients. So I encourage all of you to start asking your manufacturers these questions and how they're looking into the future,
Yeah.
So
Definitely. There, and in the white paper, I've listed several resources. Restream was another one. They, with our client Woodard and Curran, they took so much of their furniture and repurposed. Excuse me. Yeah. Any other questions that you have? I think that's the only one that was put into Menti. And you can put more in, it's not too late, or you can type it into your chat.
Comments, questions?
Are any of you in a place where you've done some aspects of circularity already in your company, or you're talking about it, looking at it?
I'm starting to talk to my manufacturers about it, and I think they're starting to get these questions more and more, which is why I brought that up, just because the quicker we can all get to a circular economy, the better. That, as Lisa's beautiful picture of the Earth, the Earth will be a little happier too. I think last year we hit our resource cap before August, if I recall correctly. So basically that means every year, we use so many resources, and there's a certain point in the year we hit the amount of resources used that can't be replenished by what's being produced by the Earth. Usually we hit that in August.
Yeah.
I forget when we hit it last year.
It's sort of like the pay gap disparity between men and women, right? There's a time in the year when you hit it. Yeah. And I think, any of you, please go ahead. Joanne?
I work for Mass General Brigham, the parent organization over a number of hospitals here in Boston area. We use Restream. That's probably what we do the most. That's in line with this right now. If I can get them, John Fantasia to come pick some stuff up, I know it'll get used the best way it can. So that's
awesome.
I think all we're doing right now, except being LEED certified in any new construction.
Yep.
That we do.
Which which is also fantastic. I'll tell you, I've been dealing with COVID, right? So the last few days, I've not had enough energy to do anything, but I sat in bed and started deleting old emails. And do you know the amount of how it's like quicksand? Like I think, oh, and then like the next morning is just full. But if you look at those emails, whether it's personal or business, how much has to do with selling, consumer, and that's the thing we're fighting against. And it just takes energy, man, right? To fight against everything coming in saying you should buy this or you should have this. And it's just awareness for me. I became a certified declutterer. I've been following a minimalist, Joshua Becker, for years. And so at the end of last year, I'm like, hey, I think I like this enough. I'm going to learn more. And again, this is all about awareness. It's not about shame. I mean, I'm not a vegan. I'm not like any spiritual anything. None of that. But it's just starting to have awareness about what can we do differently and why should we do it differently? I mean, that's the question, Dan. Why should we even bother? And I think if we don't answer the why, then people will just see it as another fad or a trend, or they'll push against it.
I
Thanks
did
for
put
that
a link in the,
Ashley.
yeah, it's
Yeah, see that.
called Earth
Yeah.
Overshoot Day. It was August 2nd. So, but
There you
after
go.
August 2nd, anything that was produced can't be replaced by the Earth's resources.
Yeah.
And there's a really nice chart I, for some reason, can't share, but it starts tracking it in 1971, and we didn't hit Overshoot Day until December in 1971, and now we're hitting it
1971.
in August.
In
And that's only going to
August,
get
okay.
worse with a consumeristic mentality.
Yeah. And we know there's so much furniture that's just in the whole workplace now, right? Because of all the empty space. So Maria, do you mind if I share your story with WTW? And
go right ahead.
well, and this is how I got to know Maria. So WTW had 2 offices in the Boston area. They closed both down and they moved into a building that WeWork has, and they took one entire floor. So it's dedicated. It's not like they're with other people. It's WTW on one floor of this building. What is the address? Is it like 75?
75
Washington? Arlington, yeah. And this is the importance of language. So early in the project, we stopped calling it WeWork because it was important that people understood this was not a temporary initiative. This was this is a commitment. So instead of calling it the WeWork building, we called it 75 Arlington. And that furniture was all there, right? It was.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
it was all there.
Yeah, it came fully furnished. Yes. Exactly.
And how's that going now?
Since.
Have you? Yeah.
Yes.
You've been there 2 years. Has it been 2 years or?
It's been more than 2 years at this point.
Mm.
Unfortunately, WeWork did file for bankruptcy, and they have left this building, but the furniture that they put in this space is now owned by the property manager. So we're still able to use it. We're still in the same space. We're just providing our own services now.
Yeah. Good.
And because, the same way with other companies, we're looking at our real estate all over the country and all over the world. And whenever we have to close a site or move a site, we're always looking at reusing the furniture. Will I need a couple of tables here in Boston? Can you send me those? And we're making good use of the stuff that we already have.
That's great. Because as any of you know, that's one of the hardest things to do is to get rid of furniture. It is one of the hardest things for sure. Yeah.
Especially now with everyone doing the same thing, basically. Well, a lot of companies are offloading. So it's like, how can you effectively, it's hard to resell at this point to companies that need it just because there's so much influx.
You have to pay people to take it away.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Unrelated to work environment, I did put another link in the chat. I found this store like 3 weeks ago and I love it.
Oh, okay. Oh,
it's in
low waste,
Arlington.
refillable options.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now I get my laundry detergent there, and I just bring I kept my last like Gain
Yeah.
detergent and bring it with me, and like washing things. So not that it'll help the corporate aspect, but for all our little parts in taking point. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
other
you know,
stories like this too across the state. That's just the one closest to me.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's great that we do what we can individually, but really where the impact needs to happen is us at policy level, at bigger within our own organizations, really pushing change in how things have been done. Because, I mean, you know, and it's really interesting in my research, there's a whole idea of carbon footprint. The idea of a carbon footprint actually came from an oil company marketing company. A marketing company for an oil company came up with the idea of carbon footprint to put the onus back on individuals. And you know, it's still good to have that awareness, but really it is it's the bigger picture conversation that we need to keep pushing the boundaries a bit. So well, I don't see any other questions. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be here with you all. I really do appreciate it. And Ashley, thanks again for inviting me to jump in.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see Gio or Frank, and I don't have the script
Oh.
in front of me.
I'm still
Oh,
here,
Gio.
Ashley.
Hi.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm here.
I was like, I'm like, what are
No.
the programs that are coming up? I forget.
No worries, no worries. So thank you, Lisa. I think everyone will agree that that was informative and obviously very relevant and pertinent to the world today. So thank you for taking your time and spending it with us today, and to all of the attendees as well. Thank you for coming today. Also, thank you to Doug and Daryl from Landscape America. We, as Frank said, we appreciate your support. And Doug is usually at all of our events. So if anyone has any questions for him in the future, please just search him out. And before you go, please note that we will be having an all members pop-up February 15th. That's going to be at Jake and Joe's out in Waltham. And then the next Thought Leaders is currently scheduled for March 12th. And that, I believe, is going to be on Birdo and sustainability. And there will be another all members webinar sometime in February. We just haven't found the date yet for that, but it will be going up on the website. I'm not quite sure what's happening with the lighting. I look suddenly very ghostly, at least on my machine. So I apologize. But anyways, I believe that, and now it's dark again. So I believe those are the only meetings that I need to tell you about right now. But always go to the website and register for our events, because we love getting together with you and providing you with informative and relevant content. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time today. Appreciate it so much. Definitely
Yeah,
something for us all to consider going through our
thank you.
day-to-day.
Yeah, don't hesitate to email. And Maria, so great to see you. So
Yes,
hello
very
to
nice to
you
see
down
you,
there.
Lisa. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for joining. Okay.
And I will
You'll
reach
get
out
that-
about, I'll reach out about slides, Lisa, so that I can.
That's what I was about
Oh,
to say.
sure. You bet. You got it.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we'll
Bye-bye.
get this
Take
on
care,
YouTube
everybody.
too. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Rest of your day.